You may have noticed something very odd just now when we were testing our sequences. Let's run the game again to see. I'm going to pick up an item and bring it over to the teacher.
Hello.
And listen very carefully. Can you hear that? I'll run the sequence again. The audio sounds like it's coming from off on the far right. If you're wearing headphones, you can probably hear that a little better. That's odd. That's not the way that should sound at all. Well, as it turns out, a sequence is an emitter, just like our fountain here. So depending on where the player is on the screen,
Hello.
we're going to hear the audio from different places. If I bring an item over to the baker and play the audio,
Hello.
now it sounds like it's coming very far away from the left. We didn't notice this before when we used our test event, which I'll show you now. See, that sounds correct. That's because when we were using that S key just to test that a sequence was playing, it was loading the sequence right on top of our player. So the emitter from the sequence was aligned with the listener from the player, so everything sounded great. We just didn't know this until now. So we're going to go in and edit the player object's code to make sure that this doesn't happen. To fix this issue, let's just open up our player object and go to its step event. Just going to make mine full screen here. Now, in the movement code block, we have this very simple line here that moves the audio listener for the player whenever it's actually in motion. However, we need to make this a little bit more complex to deal with the fact that our sequences are also emitters, and the way those line up is not quite so simple. So I'm going to just remove this code here, and I'm going to go right down here, out of that code block, and paste in a new block of code. And I'll explain what we're doing after I do. So some of this code is going to look familiar because we've actually used this before. All we're doing here is checking to make sure our control object exists, checking what the control object sequence state variable is, making sure that it's seqstate.playing, meaning that a sequence is playing. And then if that is true, we are using that same _camx and _camy variable set that we used before. We're basically just checking to see where the camera is and finding the point in the exact middle of the camera, both horizontally here and vertically. And we're saving those values to the camx and camy variables. And then we're just setting the listener position, which is the listener that's on the player, to that point. So camx and camy. So that's if a sequence is playing, we are just going to manually put the listener at this point. So it will line up to where the sequence is playing and everything will sound correctly. If a sequence isn't playing, we do exactly what we did before, which is just move the listener with the player's X and Y. Let's run the game again and we'll be able to hear the difference this time. Once again, I'll just bring an item over to the teacher.
Hello.
Now that audio sounds correct. It's directly centered. We hear the stereo of the music correctly. And let's go over and bring an item to the baker.
Hello.
There we go. The volume is correct. The sort of stereo panning is in the right spot. It's no longer being played off in the distance. That's exactly what we want. So that's just a little thing that we had to do, but we haven't used our sequence in a while, and I want to make sure that we understood what was going on. So with that done, you can go ahead and close the game window, and let's move on.